Hello, this is Pastor KT here with Tucson Community Fellowship. I'm just signing on today to answer a question we had this week. We had one question this week, and it was about the weights and measures and scales that are mentioned throughout Proverbs. So, one of the things that was noticed is that throughout Proverbs, there are several mentions of weights, measures, scales, balances, depending on your translation, depending on the verse. These words are kind of used interchangeably, um, but the overall idea is that weights, measures, scales, or balances, again, these are all kind of used interchangeably, that unjust ones or false ones are abominable or detestable to God, and that just ones are belonging to God, are righteous, or are God's delight. And we see this multiple times throughout Proverbs. And the question was if there could just be some clarification as to what that really means exactly, and sort of the context around that a little bit. And so, um, really, what we're talking about here, and I think the best way to kind of think about this is like the food scales that we think of, or like when you go to like the grocery store and you have to weigh the fruit, right? They've got those little scales. So remembering at the time that this is an agrarian society, and so a lot of the things that they did, a lot of the ways that they bought things, that they traded things, that they did everything, we now can go to the grocery store and it says on there, this is so many ounces, this is, all of our stuff is already pre-labeled with what the measure is, what the weight is, all of that stuff, and is pre-priced. That was not the case. And so there was always weights and scales and balances that they were doing. So when they were buying and selling and trading things, they had scales and balances that they were using to conduct all their business. And so it was not uncommon for really any household, any person to have some sort of scale or balance that they could conduct their business with. And so really what God is saying here is he's talking about someone who would intentionally doctor their scale or their balances to cheat people. Or they would, maybe like put like their finger on it or do different things to cheat people out of money, to steal from people. Or if you notice that like someone is not, like somehow it didn't measure correctly, and you're somehow getting away with getting it for a lot cheaper than it should, and you don't say anything about that, that is you then cheating that person, and that would also be detestable. And so that's what God is saying, is this cheating in those interactions in which you're measuring and you're trading and you're going about how you do business and how you do life and how you interact with people, because this is the whole way in which their society operated. And if the way that you're going about that is dishonest and you are cheating people and stealing from people, that's abominable. That's an abomination. That's detestable. That's unacceptable. And God detests that. But then the opposite, someone who is honest, someone who is just in the way that they conduct themselves with other people, in the way that they do business with other people, in the way that they interact and handle the way that they treat others in the way that they handle their business, in the way that they handle those sorts of interactions, the buying and selling, and the way that they handle the trade and the interactions with others. When you're honest about those things, that is a delight to God, that is the way God wants things to go, that is righteous. And so that's what it's talking about. So when we think about that in our current context, we don't scale things all the time. We don't, like I said, in our society, we have things labeled. We have things, we don't function in the same way. But those principles of being honest and having integrity and the way in which we interact with people and the way in which we conduct ourselves is still very much true. Being forthright in things, like we there are still ways that we can cheat the system, right? So even thinking about like one way that could kind of translate now is like we have like all these self-checkout things now, right? It's like we're going through self-checkout and you're buying your vegetables and things, and you get the more expensive organic fruit, but when you're ringing it up, you're picking the cheapest option on the scale and ringing it up as the cheapest option. Well, that is a dishonest scale, right? That is a false balance. Things like that, that's cheating. That's theft, right? Those are ways in which we see that in today's society. Are we being honest in the way that we interact with things? I saw someone one time share something where it's like, okay, like you're pumping gas and you put $10 in, and then for some reason there's a glitch and the gas pump just keeps going once you've hit your $10 marker. Do you just keep taking that? Or do you stop it because you know that you've already got what you paid for? Are we being honest? Or are we not? And so there are things that translate to today, and whether or not we are being honest about the way we are handling the scales of our life now. And are we being truthful about the way that we're going about our interactions with people, the way we handle our finances, the way that we are handling our interactions with the world? And that's really what it's saying, is that cheating and theft and going about things in a sneaky way to try and benefit ourselves, to try and save ourselves some money, to try and get just a little bit ahead, is detestable to God. And so, and that doing things the righteous way, doing things the right way, being honest, having integrity, is a delight to God. And so that's what those verses mean. And that's how they still apply today. I hope that brings clarity. I hope that we can see how those proverbs still apply today, and hope you have a blessed rest of your day. Bye.